Hello, everybody, and welcome to Silent Sunday. I am Luke.
And I am John.
And we are back. And today we're going to talk a little bit about multi-user online battle arenas, I think is the actual correct terminology, or multiplayer?
Multiplayer, probably. Multiplayer
okay.
Online battle arena.
Could be. We're going to talk MOBAs today.
It's just easier just to say MOBA.
I think everybody kind of knows what a MOBA is, and if you don't, this will serve as not only a way for you to see or to hear us talk about MOBAs, but also kind of get an idea of what a MOBA is, because despite or regardless of what your feelings on MOBAs might be, they're just kind of here now, and there's no way to get around them anymore.
Yeah, they're just a thing. It's what's new, it's what's hip, it's what happened, it's what's now.
Yeah, you
I am none of those things. I am none of those things.
So yeah, we are playing Heroes of the Storm, which is the MOBA that John and I play more than basically anything else. This is by Blizzard, in case the copious amounts of Diablo and StarCraft and Warcraft characters don't tip you off as you continue to watch it. Oh, you got the fucking...
yeah.
I'm salty. I still don't have the vulture, despite the fact that I invited 10 people.
Luke did a promotional thing and failed.
Yeah, kind of, sorta.
I paid money for this.
Oh, did you? Okay,
Yeah.
That's not the vulture then.
No, this is the motorbike, the newly ordered.
Oh, okay. I see. I don't feel
Anyway,
quite as bad then.
Anyway, okay, so what we're talking about right now
we're talking
is...
game stuff. We're not supposed to talk game stuff. This is
intro
actually
to MOBAs. It's
Yes. Well, not even necessarily like an intro to MOBA so much as just
No, I'll cover that later in another show.
Yeah, John is going to actually probably do a series of stuff about sort of the basics of how to play a MOBA, but today we just kind of wanted to talk about what a MOBA was and why they're significant and just what the hell everybody's so excited about with these games.
Yeah, I mean it's a big thing that's going on right now. It's being fueled by professional esports, which you've probably
it is
heard
the
about.
Esports type of game, really, that everybody plays now, and that's pretty crazy. Well, I mean, it's not super crazy, but
no, it's I got a kill. It's the elite competition of the moment. They still do sports games and all that other stuff, but MOBA's where it's at, yo.
Yeah, so
I will continue
just
to use nothing but dated references.
Talking about what a MOBA really is, or where they started out, I guess, really is the place that you should probably get, begin when you're going to talk about a multiplayer online battle arena. It got its start, to my knowledge, or at least my understanding of the whole sort of history of MOBA, is that the first sort of known MOBA, or the first MOBA that anybody actually cared about, was this mod for Warcraft III, called Defense of the Ancients, which was basically a tower defense map, for all intents and purposes, but it added a couple of mechanics, which I guess ultimately kind of became ubiquitous, the whole sort of MOBA scene, for better or worse. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but so you have Warcraft III, which was this huge RTS game that everybody knows and everybody loves, and when the players of Warcraft sort of got sick of playing just regular old Warcraft, they moved on to doing mods and doing sort of the multiplayer mode. And shit, there's a lot of people here.
Yeah.
And so the sort of natural progression of that was people kind of taking the robust modding tools that existed in games like Warcraft 3 and sort of progressing them far beyond what they originally were, and sort of taking some of the existing mechanics of those and altering them and changing kind of the way that they work dynamically, so that they could sort of do something new and do something different with it, aside from just the standard, build up your base and go fight other players.
They wanted to change the level of competition just into something.
Well, they wanted to change the way that the game kind of just worked in general, and they succeeded in doing so by taking by making it more not to say that standard RTS is not already super competitive, but putting an even larger emphasis on the competition of the game.
Yeah.
And making it like multiple players, even number of players on either side, and putting them into teams and making it sort of a team sport.
Which is sort of the progression that made made it take off as an esport, because it really lends itself to teamwork. In fact, you cannot be good at this game if you don't know teamwork.
Right. So the first...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on. No, go on. I was just going to get back into the history stuff, but you're actually talking something that's relevant, so go ahead.
No, there's actually more to say about the history, too, right? Like, it's
oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's sort of the definitive, it came from here response. But there was sort of a lead-up to this. I mean, obviously the Dota mod was the first.
Well, it was the first one that was like really a MOBA, or the game that kind of defined what a MOBA was.
Yeah. But there were sort of early attempts at it that were sort of coming in through the MMO space.
Yes.
Unleash the Fury, if I remember the name of the thing correctly. I don't know if it ever got anywhere. I don't think it did. But it was the exact same concept. It was basically taking PvP arenas from MMOs and making that the entire game.
Okay. So are you framing that as an MMO, or just kind of one of those early, like massively competitive online games?
It's
I'm not familiar with this game. Was it a MOBA or?
Yes, it was. I think. I remember them calling it a multiplayer battle arena.
Okay.
But like I said, it was sort of. It was before this was enough of a thing to have its own name.
Right. I mean, like nobody
referencing Dota.
Yeah, this didn't exist before, before sort of that era, and then it just kind of came in hot, and everybody kind of fell in love with it, I guess. Or, actually, I'll admit, like I was actually very resistant to MOBAs.
Oh, me too. Super
I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, probably was the first time that I really started playing MOBAs. So
it's way sooner for me.
That said, I played a little bit of like Dota, like the original Dota mod on Warcraft 3, because I was a big Warcraft 3 player. Like I've always loved RTSs.
Right.
But I didn't really see a lot of the draw for it, and I've never been as hardcore a like multiplayer gamer as I have sort of become in my old age, as it were. When I was younger, I was very resistant to. I was very resistant to sort of competitive multiplayer games, because I didn't
the
really
whole
like the
idea of
conflict.
esports to me seemed ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
and now you really kind of start to get it once you kind of figure out.
I've got it bad
the
now.
draw of MOBAs
I've got
sort
it
of
bad.
just esports in general. Now, I would like to say I've been a lot more into esports myself, but I've always been more sort of interested in the speedrunning scene, which has always been kind of my thing.
Is that actually competitive? Like in an esports
it's
way?
competitive in a more sort of score rush kind of way, where everybody is trying to be the best at it, and there are huge, like, important leaderboards and stuff like that are actually happening within the speedrunning scene all the time, and everybody's always competing for world records. And I should totally talk about speedrunning at some point.
You for sure should, because I don't know squat about it.
Oh yeah, man. Okay, so that's coming.
Yeah,
but
so right now
this
is my jam right here. We're talking about my jam.
Yeah, I'm totally like down with MOBAs. I love them, and we play it at work.
Yes,
like this is the thing. At my company, or at our company.
Really, our boss's company. We just work there.
Well, the company we work at.
But sure, they won't listen to this. So yeah, our company.
I don't know. They might. You never know. Oh, jeez, I got caught by my own zombie wall. I hate when I do that. But yeah, in the company that we work at, we game on out of lunch breaks, right? That's
because when you're working on games, what you do in your free time is you play more games.
Yeah. Yes, when you make games, that's just kind of the natural progression. That's just what people do. You start playing the games, and unless you kind of start to really hate games, which is when people start to kind of churn and no longer work in the industry, Generally speaking, people are just like not only making the games, but just enjoying the games and sort of loving the games and just learning everything there is to do about games. And especially if you're like a designer or producer like John and I are, then if you are not playing the games, it's a disservice, right?
Well, you're just not informed about what you're making, right? If you don't know
to your
what
industry, and if you don't know what the hell you're making, why are you doing it in the first place, right? So. But I mean that's once again neither here nor there. I'm kind of getting off topic. So
meandering.
Yes. But that's Serious Sunday for you.
We're totes gonna win this.
Oh yeah, no, we are just dominating the living shit out of these things. We turned it on to Adept. Like before we started recording, John was like, "Well, what difficulty level should we do? Should we just do like a quick match against real humans?" Like, no, real humans are way too unpredictable for this. For like recording an episode of our show, like I don't want to have to be like paying attention to people and like figuring out how to respond to people's pings and shit.
So getting back to what a MOBA is.
Yes. Sorry, So what a MOBA essentially is okay. In Warcraft III, in this mod, you had defensive structures, turrets. And the idea was, so Warcraft II, way back in the day, introduced heroes to the Warcraft model. It was, I believe, and I might be wrong on this, and somebody will undoubtedly give me...
I thought it was 3 that introduced them.
No. Warcraft II, the first expansion, had heroes in it.
Oh.
Warcraft III put a much larger focus on heroes.
I probably didn't own the expansion is the problem.
Yeah, and it came out like a while after, and this is before people really started kind of seeing expansions as being like this really important thing to like change the whole sort of thing of the game. And then when StarCraft came around and Brood War was like, yeah, without Brood War, geez, I mean, you don't even have healers. That sort of changes the whole dynamic of the game, and people kind of learn to understand that. But to me, especially a single player, it was just more campaign content, and I didn't play Warcraft 2 all the way to the end, so I figured until I played all the way to the end, there's not really much point in me getting the expansion of this game. But they introduced heroes, and so what the MOBA does is it takes that concept of heroes and it assigns one to each player, and that's it, as opposed to the usual RTS game where you had control over an entire army, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of automated...
Yeah, and so instead of you having an army, everybody on your team, or each team, has a central building, this thing called a core. Well, it's not central, but this main building that's on either side of the map, that's at the center of your base, called the core, that spawns units for your team at a regular interval. And those units have a waypoint set, have a patrol point set that would take them from that point on your map all the way across the map to the enemy's core. And so you would have these big old RTS style maps, because this is back in the day when all these maps were very large and cumbersome. And you would they would have to basically you had to follow the rules of Warcraft 3, right? Because at its core, it was still Warcraft 3. You still had to level up the heroes based on Warcraft 3's hero leveling algorithms, and you had to sort of work towards these goals. And all of the buildings had the number of HP. Now, I mean, you could create custom buildings and stuff like that. So like HP and so on were kind of normal, but to my knowledge, the Defense of the Ancients, and I will look this up and see if I'm right or not, used basically just existing heroes and with their existing stats, and then just kind of built a map that allowed you to kind of go across and sort of fight. And so you would go through, and there would be gates, and there would be towers, and you'd have to get your team all the way to the enemy's core and destroy it in order to win the game. And that is the MOBA at its core, right? And
yes.
That has not changed very much over time. And like as those central concepts go, I think that's pretty much perfect. It's exactly where it should be for these kinds of games. Now,
Sorry,
the
we're
other
just with the
things
wind
that
here.
yeah, no, we're yay, we won the first fight. We'll do a second one. The other things that sort of exist in Heroes of the Storm, and this, well, not Heroes of the Storm, but in MOBAs in general, and actually to a lesser degree in Heroes of the Storm, and this is actually one of the really major, what's the word here? Polarizing points of Heroes of the Storm, is that despite sort of Blizzard being the progenitor of the, I'm going to switch over to a different character.
Me too.
Being the progenitor of the sort of MOBA genre, they kind of took it and they just changed a lot of things about it. But the way that it worked originally was you had lanes, which are these sort of areas that are sort of a straight shot from point A to point B, point A being your base, point B being your enemy's base. One straight through the middle, and one up the left, and one up over the right. I move my mouse in the opposite of left and right. Don't judge me. That were where sort of most of the main combat would happen. And I'll kind of point these out as we go through, because this map has a much more well-defined lane and jungle. And those are the two main terms.
Literally,
right?
jungle.
Yeah. The lanes are where most of the combat would happen, and the jungle is where you would fight monsters. And because it was Warcraft 3, there were a lot of sort of neutral monsters that you could set up that would stand around and just aggro on you once you were at a certain distance.
The battle begins shortly.
So...
You ready for combat, soldier? A true
Did you lose your train of thought there, or are you picking up power?
No, yeah, I was picking points. I was picking skills.
Like, wow, he just stopped talking, and I don't really know what to say.
Lanes and jungle. So the jungle would be where you would run into these neutral monsters, and you would have to fight them, and traditionally, because you had to level up your characters at a certain rate, they would put in a number of these monsters, including one or two particularly powerful monsters, which are called bosses, obviously, that you would have to kind of really defeat in order to sort of finish up, right? To get to sort of the natural sort of ending point.
Oh, I see somebody there. Yep.
Oh, it's Nova. Yep.
Nobody likes Nova. Ah.
So yeah, and then so what this sort of, well, the precedent that this set was, you would have these lanes, and this is the lane that we're standing in right now, right, where we're up against other heroes typically, and we have our and also the mobs, the creeps, which are these guys are called, wander through the lane. Hey, I hit Nova. Hello. Aw, I couldn't Wolfheart to her? That sucks. I thought I could jump over Nazeebo's wall and kind of get in there and fight her, but I was wrong.
It's okay.
Yep. So yeah, and then in most of the sort of older fashion MOBAs, it would kind of be a necessary evil, really, for you to go in and spend a bunch of time doing what is called as what's called the jungling phase, which is you go into this area which is called the jungle, which is what we're doing right now. Basically, Heroes of the Storm actually has this sort of imposed jungling phase where you kind of get out of the sort of main lanes, and instead you head into the jungles to fight these monsters. Although it kind of ends up ends up being a hero versus hero brawl no matter what you do.
Well, that's that's the whole point, right? It's knowing when to get into a fight, when not to, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so you would go in and you would get a bunch of XP, or you would attempt to get a bunch of XP, and that would be sort of the whole point of.
Basically, you're trying to work your way to kill the other people's fort.
Yeah, I'm gonna die. I died in a bad way. Yeah, and so this jungling phase would be where you would get most of your XP, and then the laning would be where you would fight other heroes. And there would be heroes that were more well suited to doing one or the other. And so, yeah, that's kind of the sort of basic main tropes of the MOBA. The laning phase where heroes fight other heroes, and where you have a bunch of mobs that are going back and forth and trying to fight one another, and you have these gates and walls that you have to sort of destroy.
And it's the reason that excuse me, the reason that I'm so in love with Heroes of the Storm as a MOBA is because it's, of all of them, I think it's the most accessible.
Yeah, well, it's the one that does away with a whole lot of the really sort of dumb bullshit that a lot of other MOBAs do, and I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that point. But I find that many of the other sort of MOBAs that you're likely to sort of run into... Aw, man. Did we lose both bosses?
No. We beat the other one.
Oh, you guys got the other one?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Sorry, game talk. And so, yeah.
It's also the more teamwork-oriented one. There's no...
Right.
There's
so,
no
yeah,
benefit in this game to screwing your teammates. Which
yeah,
I
that
also
was another
like.
thing. So in Defense of the Ancients, in Warcraft 3, because you were on similar teams, but you weren't sharing experience because you couldn't back in Warcraft 3, the whole idea was you would get experience for being the one to get the quote-unquote last hit on an enemy.
An old MMO trope, which is just... And I guess RPG.
Well, it exists as an MMO trope as well, but it was kind of a necessary evil for a game like Defense of the Ancients, where you were on a different team, despite the fact that you were on the same team, right? You were allied, but you weren't sharing an experience pool. So your hero would level up because when you got the last hit, because obviously you got the last hit, and therefore you got the kill. And so you get the experience, and that allows you to kind of get that sort of additional bonus or benefit of being
wrecked.
You died.
Oh, just painfully destroyed in any conceivable way. Just embarrassing.
Yeah. We're doing a lane push at the moment, trying to make our way and sort of destroy the enemy towers. And so that's basic gameplay, right? Like, you would level your characters up a little bit, and you get strong enough that you could eventually destroy these enemy towers. And you would allow your creeps to kind of come in, and they would soak up a bunch of the damage. The whole idea of your creeps is they're basically they're bullet sponges, right? They will sort of take the damage for you so that you aren't getting wrecked by these towers. And then you would also have...
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, you would be leveling up your heroes so that you would get powerful enough so that you could destroy these enemy towers, and by doing so, finish off other enemy heroes, and there was a bunch of things that were sort of involved in the whole way that it worked out. But that's one of the things that they have kind of almost done away with in this game, Heroes of the Storm, is that whole last hit thing. In this one, they finally took that last step in making you all on one team, right? Where you share experience, because, I mean, why the fuck wouldn't you, right?
Well, aside from just limitations of the mod.
Well, aside from, I mean...
That's why I don't understand why Dota 2 didn't do it, right? Like...
You have all of these games. Well, I don't know. Like, I think that's just Valve being too safe. Really, honestly, like, because I mean, despite Portal and so on being like this amazing and sort of revolutionary thing, I think a lot of the developers at Valve are not overly like, they're not overly creative. They're just really damn good at what they do. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I mean, I'm sure they were trying to go for like a faithful recreation. Wrecked again.
Oh man, that sucked. So
Wrecked
I was wondering why,
what?
Sorry, I was getting these seeds, and I was killing these monsters, and the seeds were just getting grabbed, and I was like, what's going on here? And Nova was taking them all.
Fun.
Yeah. Dumb me. I just gave them all those seeds. Like an idiot. But what are you gonna do? So, yeah. You had this sort of weird... This is one of the weird things. This is one of the reasons why a lot of MOBAs, I think, sort of cause problems, or a lot of people sort of dislike the way that a lot of MOBAs are played, because it causes not only like competitiveness against other people, like other teams, but also has this potential to create this huge sort of strife among other people that you're supposed to be cooperating with.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like
that's what I don't understand. Is that seems to be really terrible design. Like,
yeah, like you're competing for last hit, and you're competing for, and like if you are too low of a level, for example, and you're dying too often, your respawn rate is really low. So all of a sudden, the rest of your team is at a distinct disadvantage because your hero is no longer in the fight. And so, like, and I mean that persists into games like Hero of the Storm.
yeah, for sure.
There's kind of just no way around it. But I mean, that's also, in a manner of speaking, sort of a good design choice, because it gives people a very good reason to cooperate and to work together to these sort of common goals. Because otherwise,
It's so distracting.
yeah, I know. Some of the other games that we've played, we've mostly been like. We've recorded prior to playing the game, but John and I both really enjoy playing Heroes of the Storm, so we were like, why don't we just play while we talk?
Yeah, now we know.
And yeah, now, well, yeah. You get distracted playing these games, especially these ones that are like, that sort of require a certain amount of sort of communication between players.
Yeah, I mean, this is currently my favorite game.
Yeah.
It's got everything I'm looking for. It's perfect for someone my age. Someone in their 30s with kids and all that fun nonsense. Because you can jump in, a match is only about 20 minutes long, and if you only get time to play one match, so you still get to play a full session, right?
Yeah, they're quick. Like you guys saw us, we already finished a match. We are in a pretty good position to get very close to the next, like, finishing this match, and that's probably when we're going to call it an episode, but...
Hey, this is an episode.
Yeah.
What else would we call it? Wow. I need sleep. I need sleep
Good
so
work,
badly.
Groucho.
Yeah. Didn't work out.
It's okay.
I thought, hey, I could take on their entire team by myself. That's how balance works. I find in these games I can know exactly what I'm doing wrong and just continue to do it mercilessly.
Oops, that was a bad choice. I died. Okay.
Like, it
so,
looks...
case in point, as you level your characters up, as you get to a much higher level in the game, you get a much longer spawn time. So very early in the game, when I was like level 1 or level 2, then it would be like a 5 or an 8-second timer. We are now level 15, and my timer was 30 seconds. Maybe, I don't know, it might be 2 seconds per level. It's hard to say. It's actually higher than that, because I know around level 20 it's like a 60-second timer. I'm not sure what the exact numbering there is. I'm sure if I looked online I would find it. But yeah, so... yeah, there you go. Now I'm back, and it's time to continue the fight.
Had someone we had to kill there.
Yeah, we had to kill Kalthus.
Getting on my
He needed
nerves.
to just die. Which is usually the way that Kalthus works, really. Like, he just kind of has to die.
Yeah,
typically.
it's what I like about this game as a sport as well, which is every character sort of has their position, and
Yes.
you're always better off when people are playing their position. You can just come in here and just mash buttons and not use any strategy at all, but this game really gets into its own when you're strategizing and when you're working with other people, and it really, really shines in that. Because if you're good at one thing and not another thing, that doesn't exclude you, right? You can pretty much get away with playing your position.
Yes, and that's something that has, I mean, in a manner of speaking, that's been around since like MMOs and stuff like that. This whole concept of you have a number of different specific roles. And so this very closely sort of follows those tropes. There is the there are 4 types in Heroes of the Storm, and I guess sort of accepted in most of these games, which are tank, well, basically in this game it's called a warrior, support, specialist, and assassin.
Yes.
Right? Which are also, like, your warrior basically is equated to your tank or your brawler in this game. Your assassin is sort of the DPS character, the glass cannon, the one that does a bunch of damage, but also dies very easily. And then the oops, that was dumb of me. And then the support is like your healer and your buffer. And then finally,
it's never not funny.
What's that?
Buffer. Never not funny. Anyway.
Oh, the person who buffs.
Yep, I'm like 4. Don't worry about it.
It's cool, dude. I've been there.
We've all been 4.
And yeah, your specialist is kind of everything that doesn't fit specifically into that mold.
Yeah, and they do a good job with every new hero they create. They do a pretty good job with keeping them in their place and yet sort of giving them a couple of little powers that are similar to other classes.
Yeah.
So every character feels different to play. Every character can be played 7 or 8 different ways. So it's a pretty diverse and tactical game.
Yeah, that's one thing also that Heroes of the Storm has sort of streamlined, but does exist in all of these games, is that as you level your character, as opposed to them just only gaining more power, they also gain special abilities. Now, the way that special abilities worked in the original Defense of the Ancients mod for Warcraft, once again, because you couldn't just define a lot of special abilities, like you did have special abilities, but you would also have to get like artifacts and items. Was in Heroes of the Storm, it's all down to special abilities because it's designed that way. You can just do that when you're making a new game. In all these older games, you kind of had to shop for artifacts.
Yeah, I feel like Heroes of the Storm is the first one to really try to redefine.
Yeah, like a lot of these games, and I don't know if that's just being risk averse or because they were like, well, why if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or what, but. Yeah, the way that that they have worked traditionally and the way that they continue to play is that you've got you've got to fight until you've gone long enough to get enough gold in order to go over and spend money on buying artifacts that make you more powerful. That's been turned entirely into these things
standard
called traits in this.
Which you gain
so
at
where
every
in
couple levels.
the original games that these are based off of, you would have basically just these standard powers that would continue to get more powerful over time, but you would also have these other abilities that would just or these artifacts otherwise that would be what gave you your additional things like more range or make you like hit harder or shoot faster or whatever. Those have been sort of changed up in games like Heroes of the Storm, where they just basically turn it into things that you choose when you level up, as opposed to having to go back to your base so that you can buy stuff, which is just kind of a necessity of the old game.
Yeah,
so,
what I enjoy about this is how closely you can see it draws back to its roots.
Yes.
But isn't sort of, confined by them.
Right.
Whereas I think that a little more League of Legends and Dota 2 are more deeply mired in sort of the traditional MOBA.
Yes.
This is like a second generation, I think.
In some ways, like I totally understand why those ones sort of retain the sort of rabid fan base that they continue to have. because they're a well-established formula.
Yep.
It's easy to understand because you do have a lot of players who are like, well, this, and this are the things that you have to do, and by having to go back and pay attention to what you're buying, that's a little bit more additional levels of strategy. And because you have to go and do this sort of long-ass and sort of boring jungling phase, I know, shots fired, you have to like sort of manage your time, and you have to know when you should be jungling, and you have to know when you should be like fighting in the lanes. Are we doing one more round?
No, I don't think so. I'm just frigging around.
Okay, cool beans. So okay, I should wrap this up. So basically, what I want to say with this sort of in its general is, I think that a lot of MOBAs. And there are a lot of MOBAs now that sort of are getting into, so the original, the main contenders right now being League of Legends, which is the biggest game on Earth.
Yes.
At this point, well, at least outside of the MOBA space, or the biggest like esports game in the world.
Oh yeah,
because I'm sorry, Clash of Clans is never going to be esports. Sorry, guys.
Not in the same way, for sure. It's
no,
thing.
certainly not. Certainly not. Like, they can pretend it's going to be, but an async game is never going to draw the same kind of an audience that a synchronous multiplayer game.
No, now
like
that
League of
I'm
Legends
more
or
familiar with
Smite.
it all and well versed in it, I completely get what needs to be there.
Yes.
And I don't know if
Or
more games
Strife,
yet
or
have
Heroes
it.
of the Storm, or Dota 2, or any of those games do. I think that there are a lot of people who are going to be resistant to Heroes of the Storm because they think that an older game, or sort of a game that takes away a lot of these additional and sort of cumbersome things, have sort of taken an opposite step in innovation, which is a very uncommon thing to do. There's this philosophy in game design that's called +1ing, or adding a +1 to something, which is basically to say, here is an existing game mechanic. Here is a thing that you can do, and you are going to always do this thing. And in order to make a new thing out of that, in order to make a better game, you tack something onto the top of that. You go, okay, this is... So, like, the MOBA is Warcraft III, but everybody is on a team.
Yes.
Right? Or it is two teams fighting. It's Warcraft 3, but it's two teams. It's much smaller, and they're fighting. Let's go for something a little bit more... a little bit more recognizable. If you play mobile games, and I just talked about Clash of Clans, right? You build a town, you build a bunch of units, and you send them out to fight each other's towns. The +1 on that was their second product, Boom Beach, right?
Yep.
Where Boom Beach had a much larger focus, I think, on like sort of the strategic way that you handled your trips, as opposed to just dropping them all. There's a little bit more control in the way that you could do that, if I'm not incorrect.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
There's an item that does it.
Yeah, adding controls, right? Adding unit, so it's Boom Beach is Clash of Clans plus unit control, right? Whereas Here's the Storm came along, and they were like, yeah, so Here's the Storm is every other MOBA minus the boring shit that takes you out of the fight. Or you could say, if you wanted to call it a +1, it is every other MOBA plus you're always fighting other heroes.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? But I think like it's more easy to kind of understand how Heroes of the Storm works, because it has taken away a lot of the sort of necessary evils that existed at the time of Defense of the Ancients, because they had to be there.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I come in. Is my plan in the future is to take Heroes of the Storm and create just a guide for the absolute beginner. Because when I found... when I was starting to learn how to play the game, there were lots of guides to tell me how to get to rank 1 and all this other bullshit out on the net. But what I couldn't find was something that just told me how to goddamn play the game. What does everything mean? How does it all go together? What am I trying to do? You know, these little fucking questions, right? You want answers to them? So I'm going to try to provide that in a series upcoming from this, which is why we let in with this particular episode this week.
Yes. Yeah, so John is going to take over a series of shows as we go forward on our channel, which is going to explain the basics of MOBAs. And the best way to learn the basics of MOBAs is in the game that distills MOBAs down to its most base form, which is Here's the Storm. Now, I think as you probably continue through it, it will behoove you at some point eventually to go on to something like League of Legends, which does sort of add more layers on top of it, or in many cases it has existing layers that were stripped out for Here's the Storm. Mm-hmm. But that said, like, learning how to play one of these games is a daunting task, and this is a huge genre of games, and unless you kind of grew up playing them, which a lot of young people did, right? Someone like us, both of us are in our mid-30s, right? So, learning to play a MOBA it takes a lot of work, because like when we were getting started, you're kind of used to, you got to go over and you got to fight and you got to defeat this thing, and these are games of retreating.
Yes.
Right? You get into a fight, but very rarely, like you could finish a map, you can finish a game and only have like 4 or 5 total team kills, right? Against other heroes. Like you're in constant combat. You're constantly trying to fight the other person back, but you're not 100% necessarily trying to defeat them. You're not trying to kill them so much as you are just trying to make sure that they aren't pushing their objective and you are making constant progress on your objective. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it can just be counterintuitive for the casual player.
Yeah. So learning what these objectives are and how to accomplish them, and what the terminology is, and how to play these kinds of games, and what the different character archetypes and stuff like that are. John is going to go into deep detail on this, and that's going to be pretty awesome. But you guys can look forward to that. But for now, I think that's probably enough for this episode of Serious Sunday. Yeah. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching us play. I know that we're nubs, or whatever the current term is.
I believe it's called noob.
Yeah, there you go. No, I know it existed as NOOB, but people are typing like NUB or something like that these days, right? Noob. Yeah. We're noobs. We're not that great at these games, but whatever, right? Like we enjoy ourselves. Yeah, we don't claim to be. This is like us playing Here's the Storm, and we enjoy ourselves. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed playing this. John is going to come at this with a much more sort of analytical bent to show you what exactly you're supposed to be doing in these kinds of games, so that, maybe you can get into them too. Because once you get over sort of the external perception that MOBAs are this huge, sort of daunting and scary and toxic type of game, which they can be. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, at some point you should probably like just jump into a game of Hero League or something like that and just like keep an eye on the conversation, because it is terrible, even in Heroes of the Storm. But like, Here's the Storm has done a very good job in sort of minimizing the amount of toxic mechanics, but that's a talk for a completely different day.
Agreed.
Yes, but there you go. So that is Here's the Storm. That is the MOBA. This is your introduction to MOBAs on Serious Sunday. Your intro to the introduction to MOBAs. Okay?
It'll be the intro to the intro to the intro to the MOBAs, and then we're going to explode the MOBAs.
Yes. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed the show. We will see you again tomorrow, as always.
Bye.
Have a good one.